Once upon a mountain top, 3 little trees stood and dreamed of what they wanted to become when they grew up. The first little tree looked up at the stars twinkling like diamonds and said, "I want to be the most beautiful treasure chest in the world." The second tree looked at a stream. "I want to be a strong sailing ship carrying powerful kings." The third tree looked down into the valley below and at the villages and said, "I don't want to leave this mountain top at all. I want to grow so tall that when people stop to look at me, they will raise their eyes to heaven, think of God. I will be the tallest tree in the world." Years passed. The little trees grew tall. One day, 3 woodcutters climbed the mountain. The first woodcutter looked at the first tree, said, "This tree is beautiful. It's perfect," and cut the tree down. The second woodcutter looked at the second tree. "This tree is strong. It's perfect," and cut the tree down. The third tree felt her heart sink when the last woodcutter looked her way. She stood straight and tall and pointed to heaven. The woodcutter didn't even look up. "Any tree will do for me," he muttered, and the third tree fell. The first tree was made into a feed box for animals. The second tree was made into a small fishing boat that was taken to a small lake, and each day he brought in loads of dead and smelly fish. The third tree was confused. She was cut into strong beams and left in a lumber yard. What happened, the once tall tree wondered. All I ever wanted to do was to stay on the mountain top and point to God. Many years passed, and one night a baby was placed in the feed box. "This manger is beautiful," the baby's mother said, and suddenly the first tree knew he was holding the greatest treasure in the world. One evening, the small boat was on the Lake of Galilee. There was a storm. The little tree shuddered. He knew he did not have the strength to carry passengers safely through the wind and the rain. But a man on board awoke, stood up, stretched out his hand and said, "Peace." The storm stopped, and suddenly the second tree knew he was carrying the King of heaven and earth. One Friday morning, the third tree was startled when her beams were yanked from the woodpile. She flinched as she was carried through an angry, jeering crowd. She shuddered when soldiers nailed a man's hands to her. She felt ugly and harsh and cruel. But on Sunday morning, when the sun rose and the earth trembled with joy beneath her, the third tree knew that God's love had changed everything. It had made the first tree beautiful. It had made the second tree strong. And every time people thought of the third tree, they would think of God. And that was better, so much better than being the tallest tree in the world.